What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Let's get this thing rolling. Just kind of click the go button. I'm getting everything together over here. I think I got all the lineups in place and everything, but I just kind of wanted to dive in today. We had a great win yesterday. Not we, me, like we, the community here. And I wanted to share it. I've been excited all day to jump on and share this. It's on Twitter, got shouted out in the Discord, but I'm just going to throw it up on the screen here real quick. Just big congratulations to our guy Freaky Meech. Took down a monster. Fourth place in the 444 on FanDuel. First place in the $33. Looks like he took home about 16 grand, probably around 15K profit. Not too shabby. Really appreciate the shout out from Freaky Meech as well. He said, I just want to say thank you to Digital B21. That's me. Rotoscouts, that's also me. For the amazing content you post daily for free. Never thought I could make this kind of money in DFS. All the years grinding finally pay off, man. I'm lost for words. So I really appreciate him shouting that out. It's a great compliment to him, to me, but awesome for him. I am so happy. That made my night seeing that. I was at that miserable Yankees game. I got home. I fired up Twitter, and all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. Look at this. So really made my night. I actually woke up this morning like, I don't feel like getting out of bed yet. I want to sleep in. Plus, I had that win last night. I feel pretty good. And I was like, wait, that wasn't me that won. That was somebody from the site. That's how good it felt to have that win come down. So really happy about this one. Congrats to Freaky Meech one last time. Hopefully he's around. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun by shouting him out before he's here. We'll go back to it if I am. But looks like we do have a good group of folks here in the chat already. Larry C's here. Stephen B's here. Matt Tomlinson's here. Aloysius, Lone Wolf's here, Fanatic, 8 Game, Greg B and Cone, got everybody here. Trey's here, Dimitri's here. What's up, Dimitri? Oh, that's you? That's Dimitri's Freaky Meech? I didn't know the first name connection, bud. No tips necessary. The tweet was tip enough, my friend. You guys keep marketing stuff like this, we can keep it free for a little while at least. So whenever you guys hit anything, feel free to blast it out. Let me know about it. Dimitri was nice enough to put the Roto Scouts logo on his handle there. That was also, great advertising, obviously, for the site and everything. So that's great. Whether you guys have that, do that, care about that or not, let me know if you hit something. Big, small, indifferent. W's are W's. I love to see it. And, like I said, it feels good for me at the end of the night. I didn't win anything last night. I had Carlos Rodon as my pitcher. Did not work out for me, but I love seeing stuff like this. So one more time, congrats to Dimitri. That's awesome. Looks like we've got Monty Pritchett in the chat. Fanatics here. I think I got everybody. Mamba's here. What's up, Mamba? Po Degen Stoner, Wake and Bake DFS Baseball bitches. Love it. Everybody's joining the chat. So we got a good one to deal with today. 8 Gamer. We could kind of take our time. I took my time writing the article today. I actually almost ran out of time at the end because I was just like kind of meandering my way through stuff, checking some stuff out, and going through the slate. So I think it's a really interesting one. I think we've got a really stark pitching board with like a lot of haves or have not type options at the top half and then the bottom. So let's just jump into it. I'll throw it up on the screen. Whoops. I got to change it up first. Apparently I can only share one thing at a time. Stop sharing that. Bear with me one second. There we go. We don't want to start with the last game of the slate. What I was thinking was we would jump over to the pitching board here real quick to get us started again. I think this is a decent way to like start and end the show. Because it just gives so much, the pitchers give so much context to everything that happens on these slates. So it's just kind of a decent way. 8 Game says, did someone say 8 Game? Perfect size. Love it. Good call. That's got to be a good sign for you, man. Whenever there's an 8 Gamer, you got to get a little excited. So my pitching board's got similar to some other ones I've seen around town, because I do think it's like I was saying, a pretty stark board where like a lot of these guys are either low end pitchers or scuffling rookies with okay projections against tough teams. But like these guys are all very low end. Smiley is Kikuchi is these guys all project out in like a small mid-range here. And then I think this whole top class, everybody from 30 to 37 there, these are all essentially similar projections. You've got Dunning and Gonsolin in pretty good matchups for very cheap prices. I think these are two very clear, stark, clear-cut SP2 options. And then all these guys are fairly obvious SP1 options. Cole's facing the Rays. That could go south in a hurry. McClanahan less so against the Yankees. Senga can pitch inefficiently, so he might be wild, walk 5 and come out of the game after just 5 innings. Like, there are flaws with some of these guys, but I think it's a very clear top handful of like ace caliber guys. Logan Webb's on that list as well, with these two guys jammed in the middle for value, and not all that much else down here. All of these guys are value guys as well, but I like these two better. Any one of like Grayson Rodriguez, Kikuchi potentially could succeed. Drew Smyly could certainly succeed against the Reds, but these guys just seem like such better options given their matchups. So I do think it's a really interesting looking slate. Larry says Dunning's pretty high. Interesting. Yeah, he's projecting out fairly well here. He's obviously, he's an up and down starter overall, and we'll talk about him when we get to that game. But he's obviously, we've seen him succeed for these prices too many times to ignore how he was projecting today. So I'm interested in that Dane Dunning spot. I think it's an underperforming White Sox lineup that he's going up against. There's all kinds of reasons to get there, but let's start at the top. Let me see if the Rays lineup is in. Some of these other ones dropped, but not that one. I'll grab these other ones as we go. So dueling aces in the first game here in the Bronx might have been a better game to attend today rather than last night. I think I'm going on, pretty sure I've got my regular seats on Saturday, and then I think I'm going again on Sunday. My uncle's in from out of town, the same one, the cousin that was in from out of town, and I met him at the Yankees game. My uncle, his father, is in from out of town, and I'm probably meeting him up the Yankees game on Sunday this weekend. So a lot of Yankees game action for me this week. But unfortunately, they're brutally bad. It's not a pleasure to watch. They almost pulled off the comeback last night. But just an ugly game. And now they face Shane McClanahan, who is a very high caliber pitcher. 111 innings and 20 starts, 26.1% strikeout rate. A couple bumps with 41.3% hard hits, 9.6% barrels. 2.88 home run percentage is fine, but too many walks, 9.1% walk rate. 3.0 ERA and a 3.83 xFIP, though. 15.8% swinging strike rate. That's a dominant strike rate. 31.3% CSW. There's every reason in the world to believe that Shane McClanahan is capable of posting a monster against these Yankees. You get... I'm just seeing if I put anything else in the list. Yeah, excellent strike thrower. Has allowed a few too many barrels. Yeah, it's basically how I put it in the article here. It was the depth of innings that I was looking at. It's a little bit limited in terms of depth, a little bit limited if he loses a couple of those walks. Kind of along the lines of what I was saying about Senga, he has the chance to pitch inefficiently in this spot and come out a little bit early. Last handful of games, going back to June 22nd, it was 3 2/3, 3 innings, 6 innings, 4 innings, 5 innings in those 5 starts. So it's a little bit concerning around the depth, but when he's on, and he's got a chance to pitch really well against these Yanks. You do have the looming threat of Aaron Judge in the lineup, Giancarlo Stanton in the lineup, a ridiculously bad leadoff hitter in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Aaron Boone, baby. So, Judge and Stanton are good options. Rizzo not in the lineup is a downgrade despite all his struggles. He's still one of the critical components of this lineup. It's really a 3-man lineup right here. You could get a little bit of lefty pop out of Jake Bauers. DJ's been bad all season. You can get a little bit of inconsistent production out of Bader and Volpe for counting stats. 7 homers, 10 steals, 13 homers, 19 steals. Wildly inconsistent players. It's a bad lineup. It really is. I like these 3 hitters, and that's about it. They're all correctly priced. They're easy enough to get to as a mini stack. You can put them together with probably Bauers. I would probably go down lineup and, you do want the correlated scoring from IKF since he is in that leadoff role. On FanDuel, you get triple position eligibility for 2,500, so it does make sense to include him in stacks. So if you're building a lot of Yankee stacks or you're building full 5-mans, he's probably your best bolt-on. It's probably him and Jake Bauers just in a straight line. And then, any one of these 3 guys can contribute, but they've been just so inconsistent, so infrequent. Rortvedt more there for his defense at catcher, so it's not a great Yankees lineup. That pushes a little bit of value with, despite the lefty of it, with no Rizzo in there. I think it pushes a little additional value in McClanahan's directions. He's really only going to sweat 2.5 hitters. Glaber's okay, but he's not really threatening. 13.9% strikeout rate is very good. That's a nice step forward for him this season from 22.6 last year, but just kind of a non-threatening hitter. 16 home runs is good. Infrequent power, 105 WRC plus, only a 168 ISO. So when he's not hitting home runs, he's really not doing a lot else at the plate. I don't know. Not good. Yankees need a shakeup. I don't agree with the idiots that were chanting fire Cashman, though. He's made some bad decisions. I agree, but every GM makes some bad decisions. He's made some very good moves that haven't worked out. A lot of stupid injuries and shit like that that's happened to him. So I don't agree with fire Cashman, and I don't know who else they would bring in. Like, if they fired Cashman, what I would prefer is fire Aaron Boone and make a move at the manager. I just don't think much of him as a manager. I can very easily envision like Yankees manager Derek Jeter, but he's more inclined to be in front office guy. So I would worry that they would make like a Derek Jeter swaps in as the GM for Brian Cashman kind of a move, since Jeter was like running the team in Miami for a little while and all that when he was a part owner. That would suck. I don't think Jeet's a GM by trade. Maybe they'll give me the job. I said that to my friends the other day when we were talking about the Yanks, and my buddy Lou threw the old Seinfeld scene in my face, where George goes, maybe I could be an announcer or something for a baseball team. And Jerry's like, don't they usually give that to like professional former players, things like that? I was like, yeah, it's a fair point. Rays side of things, going up against Garrett Cole, 10-8, 10-9. He projects out pretty well. He has not been bad this season, despite rumors to the contrary. He's pulled the home run issues into place. Only 2.38% home runs this season, 7.9% barrels, 40% hard hits still. So maybe a little happenstance in the reduction of home runs, but it was always just the infrequent. He's a fly ball oriented pitcher. Ball comes in fast, goes out fast. Sometimes he was giving up home runs here and there that didn't really ding his value overall, and he's improved that this year. But it could come creeping back, and a little of it is still coming through for the Rays in the model here. They're showing some big time home run upside against Cole. And they've obviously got a bunch of very capable home run hitters in that lineup, even if they've cooled a little bit through July and into early August here. They've obviously been handling the Yankees fairly well in this series. So Cole definitely on the board for high prices. 27.3% strikeouts, 6.6% walks, a 2.64 ERA, a 3.62 xFIP that is the more honest number here. But again, pretty good in terms of wrangling the contact, good whip, low walk rate. Swinging strike rate's good. CSW is good. It's a lower than Garrett Cole level strikeout rate this season. It's down, 4 points over last year, like 8 points the year before. That was a little bit off, but close enough. Good enough for government work. He's down several points over each of the last 2 years in terms of the strikeout rate, in terms of the swinging strike rate. The swinging strikes are way down. That's where the big dip in strikeout rate comes from overall. But still pitching well overall. Typically will give you 6 or 7 innings regardless of how things are going, unless he gets absolutely blown up. That's potentially in the cards against the Rays. They've been very good through most of the season. There is all this power through the lineup. There are a lot of very capable hitters for neither extremely cheap nor extremely high prices. This is just a team that fits in at very good average prices on both sites. And I think there's a lot of mix and match capability through this lineup, given the fact that everybody runs, everybody hits for power, everybody's got an above average run creation mark, except for Rene Pinto, who's got decent pop as a sneaky catcher, only 9 plate appearances. So we'll forgive his negative 46 that drags down the WRC plus. But the top 8 hitters in this lineup still carrying a 132 average WRC plus. So on average, they are 32% better than league average creating runs, which is ridiculous. Start your stack with Yandy Diaz. He's been great all season long. Hits the ball very hard. Good amount of home runs. Great on base percentage. Correlated with everybody in the lineup for everything that they do. Wander Franco is a star shortstop. 13 homers, 29 steals. He cooled a little bit. I think he got pissed off at that when he got benched for whatever it was, showing up his teammates or whatever it was, and he hasn't seemed quite the same since then. It's narrative. It's stupid to think that would be the cause. Probably just a coincidental little downturn. But overall, super talented kid, power, speed, everything you can want in a shortstop. 5,800, 3,600 is perfectly affordable for him. Brandon Lau is cheap at 4,500, 3,300 at second base. One of the best power hitting second basemen in baseball. Lefty in Yankee Stadium. Major home run upside for Brandon Lau. The 10.27 in the home run model makes total sense, as does the 10.89 for Luke Raley, and honestly the 9.62 for Randy Rosarena, and the 9.53 for Isaac Paredes. And the 10.64 for Jose Siri. That one might be a little bit of an outlier, hitting 8th, fewer chances overall, but he's got 20 homers and 262 plate appearances with a 288 ISO. 14.3% barrel rate this year. Still only cost $3,600, $3,000 too. That's the thing. Like, a lot of these guys didn't get priced up for their production, or got like very quickly priced back down during July when the team as a whole dipped. But everybody down here is productive and affordable. Isaac Paredes, 21 homers in 362, 4,100, 3,300 with triple position eligibility on FanDuel. Sign me up. 4,400 for Luke Raley, 3,000. He's got 15 home runs, 12 steals, and 295 plate appearances. Leads the team with a 150 WRC, or excuse me, second on the team with a 150 WRC plus. Any combination of hitters from this lineup in this form or most of the other forms that they roll out there is totally playable in this spot. Garrett Cole's an ace. They're in a limited run total. They've got a 3.69 as of last time I updated, when I updated the article. Actually, I updated right before the show, so still 3.69 implied run total. Only the lowest run total for the game on the board. But I think that maybe makes the Rays a little bit underowned going up against Cole. They're going to have to get to him, obviously. I think they're in play. Moderate doses given the fact that it's a low run total, but they're carrying pretty good projections up and down the lineup. They actually rank second on the board for collective fantasy point projections just because of how good they've been, and they've got good value marks across sites and a pretty good home run mark. So I think the Rays are in play, maybe a little bit more than the run total might suggest. And once you get into the bullpen in Yankee Stadium, anything can happen, but the Yanks bullpen is pretty good. So this one's kind of a four corners, lighter on the hitting for sure. It's pitching focused in this game. I would go McClanahan and then Cole. It works out in the how they project. So yeah, McClanahan then Cole. Rays bats well ahead of Yankees bats. I have some interest around the three good hitters in that Yankees lineup, but limited. Moving on, we'll see if we got lineups here. We do. Joker's here. Go lay down, pal. We made a deal, buddy. You got 4 cookies before the show. The little ones, the little teeny tiny cookies. You got little cookies before the show, and you were supposed to be quiet and lay down and be a good boy. I kept my part of the bargain. You lousy mutt. Yeah, I know. Go lay down. Go on. We got a ways to go, pal. Still 7 games to talk about. Go lay down. Blue Jays lineup going in. There he goes. He just settles in nice and quiet. Right down there. So the Orioles with Grayson Rodriguez on the hill. Now let me pull up the chat. I gotta get better at leaving the chat open. Shannon Lambert says, good thing the Angels traded for Giolito. Ouch. Did he have a clunker today? I didn't see it. Larry says, Terry, the traveling secretary for the Yankees. I would take that job in a heartbeat, buddy. Trey says, Tauchman, the greatest leadoff hitter ever. Hey, monster game yesterday. How about those Cubbies yesterday, by the way? God damn, 20 runs. I was sitting there just watching that score tick up and up and up on it while I was at the Yankee game, and I was saying, boy, kind of wish I hadn't gone a different direction in the one lineup that I played. Basically made several very incorrect decisions. The thing I got correct most in that lineup that I played was Leo Verpagero. He hit a home run, had a decent day fantasy-wise. Everything else in that lineup kind of sucked. This one, playable parts at pitcher. Both of these guys were in that lower mid-type tier. I do think there's upside for either pitcher. They're both priced appropriate for who they are. 7,200, 7,900 for Grayson Rodriguez, 25.4% strikeout rate for the rookie, pitching to a 6.21 ERA, but a much, much better 3.83 xFIP. So he's better than it seems like he is on the surface. I just don't know if he becomes that 3.83 guy or better in this matchup tonight against the Blue Jays, where he's got to work for his strikeouts, where he's going to be threatened by some power, and power's been an issue for him in a fairly hitter-friendly park. 10.6% barrels, 49.7% hard hits is significantly high. 91 miles an hour of exit velo. We typically look at 90 as the cutoff between you're okay, you're too high. 4.71% home runs. So a lot of power issues for Rodriguez. I do think he's going to turn into a very, very good pitcher in short order. But I don't know that it comes tonight. So I think he's more valued dart. I think he's more playable on DK as an SP2 at 7,200. You can use him on FanDuel. I probably will have a handful of shares. It's just not a spot I want to get carried away with. I don't really see need to target the Blue Jays on this slate with a lot of better pitching spots, or at least a handful of better pitching spots. And then probably a desire to go to some of these Blue Jays bats. Toronto, if we look at the stacks board, they rank third for projections. They rank second for FanDuel points per dollar, sixth for DK points per dollar, ninth for home runs, but I think it's probably a little bit better than that overall.
Vladdy leading the way at 9.45. There's still no Bo Bichette in the lineup, so that dings them a little bit. They've got a lot of guys who have been a little inconsistent for their power, but mid-teens power up and down the lineup. Paul DeJong joining the team, 2,800 on both sites at shortstop at the end of the lineup. Adds 13 homers, but another low average, high strikeout guy to the lineup. Dalton Varsho's been fairly inept at the plate this year, 213, 276, 355, and a 74 WRC+. But he does have 12 homers, 12 steals. They're playable parts from like Danny Jansen down, and then I think there's a lot of quality from 1 through 5. I like Whit Merrifield a lot in that leadoff spot, second base and outfield eligible. Very cheap, 4,600, 3,400 for a guy 16% better than average creating runs. A little bit of power with 9 home runs on the board. Several seasons of, if I'm remembering correctly, double-digit home runs. I think he's gotten into several. I want to check. I'm checking the several of that claim. I know he's done it. How many times has he done it? Whit Merrifield in his career has 5 seasons of double-digit home runs, peaking at 19 in 2017 while with the Royals. Those were his good years. 19 homers, 34 steals, 12 homers, 45 steals, 16 homers, 20 steals. Actually, he's never been bad. I say those were his good years, but he's never been bad. 2020 was a short year. That's what caught my eye at first. There's 9 homers and 12 steals, but then he roared back to 10 homers, 40 steals in 2021. 11 and 16 last year in 550 plate appearances. He's a good multi-category contributor. So I like Whit up at the top. Creating runs 16% better, 348 on base. Sets the table for Brandon Belt. All his pop for only 3,300, 2,800. 9 homers and 288 plate appearances, pretty good. A 190 ISO, 12.1% barrels, and he's creating runs like crazy. 14.9% walk rate, 122 WRC+. Strikes out a ton, but you take that strikeout rate with all his walks and his power and his lefty threat, especially for these prices from a DK perspective, or from a DK perspective, from a DFS perspective, you're happy to take those strikeouts at that price for that hitter in this spot in the lineup. Vladdy Guerrero, George Springer, 2 star caliber players, both at a little bit of a discount. Vladdy, as we've talked about many times, outperforming last year's contact metrics, but underperforming last year's stats and what we expect from him overall. Still a respectable 17 home runs, a 178 ISO, 118 WRC+. Springer, kind of similar, okay for counting stats and 13 home runs, 13 steals. We expect a little bit more. We certainly expect a better ISO, better run creation mark from him. But he's kind of priced down, 5,000. Definitely priced down on the FanDuel slate at 2,900. So there's a ton of value for some of their best players up here. Matt Chapman smokes the ball every time he makes contact with it. 4,800, 3,300 at third base. Definitely a part of my plans in the Toronto lineup. So I think we're getting a lot of value-based upside out of Toronto here with the under prices at the top of the lineup, and then some decent connective parts down at the bottom of the lineup. Yusei Kikuchi, good strikeout pitcher, major home run issues over time. This is a thing. Who has what wrong? I'm just jumping back to the chat. I want to make sure I didn't have something wrong. You say Labs had something wrong. What was it? Oh, Danny Jansen's not in the lineup? Or maybe Labs has it wrong. They've got him on there. I'll give it a quick little reload. They've still got him on there in the confirmed. If anything changes, we'll grab an update. Good call there. Okay. Jansen in. All right. Right on. Greg Biancone says, hey, since we were talking about baseball movie yesterday, TCM, Turner Classic Movies, is airing Fear Strikes Out, starring Anthony Hopkins. I think he means Anthony Perkins. If you're talking about the guy from Psycho, it's Anthony Perkins. Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter. But either way, I've never seen that movie. I might have to tune in 10 p.m. tonight. I'm not familiar with that one. There's a lot of old classics that I'm, that I am aware of and haven't seen, but that's one I'm not aware of, haven't seen. So I'll definitely at least DVR it and then try and check it out. I love a good baseball movie. Good stuff. So Yusei Kikuchi, as I was saying, major home run issues, but effective, manages to pitch through it in a lot of starts. This year, 3.79 ERA, 3.99 xFIP, a 25.3% strikeout rate, and 109 and a third, 21 starts. those are good numbers for a guy who gives up nearly a 5% home run rate on 9.8% barrels, 42.5% hard hits, more than enough exit velocity. Just finds a way to strikeouts, finds a way to value a lot of the time. Last year it was a little bumpier, 5.19 ERA, but still a good 4.07 xFIP. He walked way too many last year at 12.8%, and he was also giving up more barrels, more home runs. And then the year before, 11% barrels, 4.05% home runs, 9.3% walks, good strikeout rates each year. This was the biggest problem he had last year. This is what made him more of a disaster in a lot of starts last year, was the walk rate combined with even more power. This year he's really harnessed the walks. 7.2% walks is down several percentage points from 2 years ago, and then major percentage points from last year, 5+. So I do think he's playable. I do think there's value there. As I've said multiple times on this show and in articles and stuff, I tend to take I'm going to target Kikuchi tack more when he's on slates. He typically falls into that, like you can play him or you can target him, and not much in between. On this one, I think I might go on that in between route because I do want to play the Orioles. I think they're frisky enough. I think there's tons of power there. I think they can definitely frustrate him with their high walk rates for some of these hitters, like Gunner's in the lineup, which I was hoping for against the lefty after they played him against Ryu last night and he had a good game. That's awesome because he can draw walks. Adley can draw walks, doesn't strike out very much. Santander walks okay for such a good power hitter. So there's a few good guys in the lineup for walks. I think it maybe frustrates him a little bit. If he doesn't have his premium stuff, puts a couple guys on base, any one of these guys can take this pitcher deep. So I do want to go and get invested in the Orioles a little bit. They're pretty cheap. They rank out okay for power. They rank out okay for fantasy point projections. But I think at 78.86, it's probably worth grabbing at least a few darts of Kikuchi, if nothing else. And he projects out fairly well in the matchup. So it's a little bit more both-sided than I normally take on a Kikuchi start. But I will definitely prefer, I think, the Orioles side of it. I like a lot of these hitters. I mentioned Adley off the top. Just spectacular in terms of limited strikeouts, high walk rate, good power, good triple slash, does everything right, manages a great game, plays every day, calls a great game, manages the pitching staff, leads the team. I mean, you can't ask for more than that out of a first overall pick. He was first overall, right? I think so. Ryan Mountcastle, tons and tons of power, 14.6% barrels, 47% hard hits, 13 homers on the season in just 310 plate appearances. And oh, by the way, he only cost $3,600, $3,000 at first base. That is a dramatic underprice for that hitter. $4,400, $3,200 for Anthony Santander is very cheap. He's got 19 homers this year, 221 ISO, 124 WRC plus, hits from both sides of the plate. He's never been bad. He's always been a very good, consistent power hitter. I don't actually understand why he's as cheap as he is on DK at $4,400. $3,200 on FanDuel is okay. It's still too low, but it's like it makes more sense than the DK price. He gets first base eligibility over there. Not that you're gonna like replace Mountcastle, use somebody else at util because of that, but maybe you get sneaky with like. Well, there's only two other outfielders in the lineup, so I guess that wouldn't work. I was going to say you could get sneaky with like three other outfielders and him at first base at util plus Mountcastle, but that also doesn't fit into a FanDuel configuration, so forget that. McKenna, Mateo, the 3 M's at the bottom of the lineup are pretty limited options. McCann hasn't really been that specialist, that platoon-based specialist for power that he's been in years past. It's been several seasons since he was that guy. He's very cheap. He could find you a home run. He's got 3 on the season in 133 tries. McKenna is very cheap in the outfield, 2,100, 2,000, 267, 323, 395. Kind of a limited player. Mateo's got all the speed in the world, 25 stolen bases on the season, but he had like 21 of those in April. Has not done anything since then. Looked like the best player in fantasy baseball for not named Brent Rooker in all of April, and just completely died. I don't know. It seems like just his arms fell off and he just can't hit it. I really don't know what happened. Jordan Westburg's a premium prospect in the middle of the lineup for 2,900, 2,600, multi-position on both sites in the infield. Very good bat, highly regarded prospect. Gunner's been a star over the past couple of months, finding himself at the plate. Good opportunity here, lefty-lefty, despite a lot of struggles. He had a home run with 3 for 5, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored last night against Injin Ryu. The homer came against Ryu, so that was a good sign, lefty-lefty. Kikuchi's a better lefty, I think, than Ryu at this point in their careers, but I just love that he's in the lineup today. Cheap price, easily playable for me. Austin Hayes hitting cleanup behind Mountcastle and Santander. Another good bat with a little bit of righty power. Good right-handed hit tool. Shot. Now that I'm aware of that, it's in my head every time. I wrote it today and I thought shot. Austin Hayes, 3,300, 2,800, though. Good piece of value in the heart of the lineup. The Orioles are cheap. They rank mid-board 7th by projections, 6th for FanDuel point per dollar value, 2nd on DK for point per dollar value, 6th for home runs. So this one is probably blue. How did I do in the article? I know I called it four corners. All right, yeah, I'll go with this. Blue Jays bats, Orioles bats, Kikuchi value, Grayson Rodriguez value. Limited interest in Rodriguez. I think the price is right for who he's been this season. I just don't love the matchup against the Blue Jays, especially not with the focus value guys on the board. But definitely, he's at least a quality mix-in, better than a dart throw. Quality mix-in value play, but lower in my esteem than Gonsolin and whoever the hell the other one was. Let's move on. Minnesota Twins, Dakota Hudson on the mound. I don't really see a need to go to Dakota Hudson here. I know he's at a cheap value price. Second start of the year. I do think that the Twins will have to sequence to get to him. So the way that my take on this one in the article is what I kind of want to focus on when it comes to Dakota Hudson, because I really don't think there's a good cause to go to him. Even with their stupid high strikeout rate at 28.5%, he's a really limited starter. 14.6% strikeouts this year, 13.1% in a basically full sample, 26 starts, 139 and 2/3 last year. Also walked 10.2%, 4.45 ERA, 4.82 xFIP. Year before, only one start, 8 2/3 innings, so that doesn't really count. But across these two samples, this is also only 19 1/3, mostly out of the pen, but only 14.6% strikeouts this year, 13.1% last year with a lot of walks. I just don't see him, even with the Twins' downside for strikeouts, I just don't see him posting a monster start here, or a slate winning start. What I do think could happen, though, is given the Twins' inability to sequence well with all those strikeouts in the way, with a fairly limited number of, well, there's a couple decent guys in there with walks. Buxton's okay, Correa's okay, Wallner's okay, Joey Gallo's good. So some potential to draw walks, but the strikeouts put a big hole in the ability to sequence and create runs. And the one thing that Hudson does fairly well is keep the ball down, keep the ball in the yard. 1.12 home run rate on a 6.9 degree angle in the small sample this year. Last year in an extended sample, 1.51% home runs, 6.3 degree average launch, 6% barrels. There are definitely guys in the Twins lineup who know how to hit a home run against that type of a pitcher. But they're going to need to be patient and find the right pitch, and that's in a lot of cases not who they really are. So I do think it's a spot where we want to go to the Twins. I do think it's a spot where we can exploit some of their very low cost value pricing and some of the home run upside. But the home run upside doesn't really shine through in the model. So then we're left with a Twins team that has an average on base percentage for the confirmed lineup of .310, an average batting average of .232, and we're asking them to find sequencing. We're asking them to find run creation. It's not ideal. I feel like it could get a little bit trappy. I don't know what their ownership looks like, but I imagine it's fairly high, relative to other individual hitters and everything. So it might get a little bit trappy. It might be a spot to have some, but undercut the field if they get outrageously popular. If they're not popular, then it's not a trap, and you can just go to it, and it either works out or it doesn't. So it's really against the field's ownership that I would grow concerned. I do think it's a capable lineup, though. Carlos Correa, underperforming, but very cheap for his talent. Edward Julian, very cheap for his talent, considering that he's been rolling over the last 6 weeks or so. 3,500 on DK is way too cheap for him at second base, particularly now that they've got Polanco with the eligibility at third base. And you're not losing another third baseman out of that lineup that you have to sacrifice to put him there. So that's just a great combination of players. Polanco's too cheap at 4,500 on the site. He's still 3,000 on FanDuel, second base only, but it doesn't matter as much over there. So he's still cheap there. 3,400 for Julian is about right to arguably a little bit low for a kid who's got a 11.7% walk, 380 on base, 234 ISO, creating runs 52% better than average with 10 home runs in his 214 opportunities. He's a premium prospect. They expect him to continue hitting. Maybe not quite to this level, obviously. That's a pretty outrageous stat line, but also a 16.5% barrel rate, 44.6% hard hits. He's putting bat on ball very well as a rookie this season. So I do think he's underpriced. Buxton is priced down because he's just been flat bad this season. Still has power. Still can steal a base. 207, 294, 438 though. That is ugly. Below average for run creation. That's why he's so cheap. Max Kepler, on the other hand, 3,200, 2,900, 15 home runs on the season at 210 ISO, creating runs 2% better than average. We never expect Max Kepler to hit for much average or on base percentage. 11.2% barrels, 44.2% hard hits. Cheap. I feel like he's, a little bit cheap for his talent. There's upside there, and he hasn't been bad. He's been as expected. Polanco, I talked about. Matt Wallner, big time upside for power, 5 home runs in 77 plate appearances. But again, we're in a limited situation for power if Dakota Hudson's doing what Dakota Hudson's trying to do on the mound, which is just induce ground balls and get out of innings. Joey Gallo, Michael A. Taylor, kind of in that same boat. Christian Vasquez hasn't really done much of anything this season. Gallo and Taylor are guys that we roster despite a heavy strikeout rates, just hunting for low-owned home runs from the bottom of the lineup at cheap prices. Especially around those two hitters, it gets a little bit concerning with this pitcher's profile. But at the same time, Gallo is patient enough seeing pitches that he can wait out that correct pitch. It might take him 3 plate appearances to get there, but he could be one of the guys that hits that home run that ruins this theory for the night. Or they could come out and blast 4 home runs in the first inning and chase Dakota Hudson, who's a pretty bad pitcher, pretty damn quickly, and be the go-to stack of the night. So definitely do go to the Twins. They're very cheap. They're easy to get to. Little concern around the inability to sequence, the lack of potential lack of home run upside. Cardinals against Joe Ryan. This one's pretty clear cut. Joe Ryan, just go to him. 10-1, 10-3. A very, very talented pitcher. I know he's had some flaws in this last recent run of games. He's given up... let me find it here. I wrote about it. So he's given up a handful of home runs. 2 home runs in each of 3 of his last 4 starts. A little bit problematic for premium contact, a little bit problematic for home run upside. He's given up 21 home runs on the season. 5 of those came in one just complete blow-up start in late June against the Braves. Anybody could have that happen to him against the Braves. 5 is a lot, though. But some of the potential perceptions around like a home run issue, 4.20% home runs on the season, this didn't totally jibe with the 7.1% barrels. He's a fly ball pitcher, so when he makes mistakes, they do travel. 42.6% hard hits combines with 20 degrees average launch angle, and that equals home runs. But it's really only a handful of mistakes that he's made. I know that he's been kind of lousy if you just look at the surface numbers for the month of July. He had a rough month with a 6.39 ERA and all those home runs. But if you look under the covers, he had a 3.62 xFIP. That was right in line with what he's done the rest of the season. And he had a 37.1% strikeout rate over that same month of July. That was his highest month of strikeouts in the season so far. A couple of wonky home runs are not the reason to go away from Joe Ryan. He's facing a good Cardinals lineup with some power in it, but he's got the upside to pitch a great game here. 29.6% strikeouts overall, still only 4.8% walks, so he doesn't get himself in trouble. 1.09 whip, a 4.06 ERA despite the hefty ERA in July. And like I said, the xFIP is right on. This is where his xFIP was for the month of July. He was pitching exactly like himself, ran into a few mistakes. 14.1% swinging strike rate. It's excellent. A lot of upside for Joe Ryan here. A little bit of upside for the Cards lineup. We'll probably see Lars Nootbaar a lot in this leadoff role now that Brendan Donovan is out for the rest of the season. I like the spot for him, 4,200, 3,500. 276, 379, 434, 27% better than average creating runs. A little bit of power, a little bit of stolen base upside. I think he correlates really well with Goldschmidt, with Gorman, with Arenado, the power trio here. These are your 3 home run hitters. These are your 3 big threats to Joe Ryan. One of those guys could very easily hit a home run tonight. I'm not saying Ryan gets through this one flawlessly. There's a lot of power there. 18 homers, 22 homers, 22 homers. These 2 guys tied for the team lead. Gorman leading the team with a 254 ISO, 123 WRC plus. Remember that little dip he had over like 3 weeks and everybody was like, oh, well, we got our power out of him. He sucks again. No, he's back. He's still hitting the ball very, very hard. 48.8% hard hit rate, 14.6% barrels. And that little dip caused his price to go down on DK, and it stayed down. 3,900 for him is very, very inexpensive on the DraftKings slate. 53 for Arenado is fair. 57 for Goldschmidt's fair. 36 and 35 arguably a little bit cheap for them on the FanDuel slate. It's a very tough matchup for them against Joe Ryan here. There's a lot of really good hitters in this lineup. Wilson Contreras is playable where you need catchers. Tyler O'Neill has tons of power in a sneaky spot in the lineup. Only 2,500 on FanDuel, 3,500 on DK. Only 3 home runs on the season and 144 tries, but hit 34 home runs the last time he was fully healthy. Alec Burleson, Jordan Walker, and Tommy Edmonds back in the lineup. 3,300, 2,800. Kind of a down year for him. 7 homers, 14 stolen bases, though. He's a contributor of counting stats. Wherever you put him in the lineup, he'll find his mid-range homers, good total of stolen bases, up and down for run creation, but he can be a valuable wraparound play down there. One of my favorite 9 hitters in baseball when he's down bottom of the lineup. I actually prefer him hitting 9th than when he leads off. Okay, Chuck's dropping some pretty hefty ownership numbers for Minnesota into the chat there. Those are really the key hitters in that lineup, right? So if those guys are going to be that highly owned, I think it does have a little bit of a rising tide effect where, like, in stacks of Twins, all those other guys are going to be more highly owned along with those 3 hitters. Those will be the 3 most highly owned Twins in stacks. But I think it does get a little bit trappy around that. You got to get Dakota Hudson on form doing what he does okay. I don't even say does well. I say does okay because he is not a good pitcher. But that kind of confirms the trappiness of it in my mind. Lone Wolf going 4-4 with the Cubs. Oh, Greg fills in a little bit more detail about that movie. Story of Jimmy Pearsall, an absolute character. He got called out on strikes and pulled out a water pistol and squirted the umpire. That's fantastic. I hope that entire movie builds to just that moment, and then that's the end. Like, with the big swelling orchestral score, like in the Natural, and then it's just the guy squirting him with the water gun. End of movie. Fiend. So yeah, definite interest in Twins bats for sure. But again, I'm a little bit tepid on it. Might go under the field. Certainly I'll be under the field on like Buxton exposure. Correa at 11 is okay. Polanco at 8.7 is okay. But that exposure to Buxton is pretty hefty. So I'll probably be under the field on Twins. Might burn me, might not. There's plenty of sources of value that you can go to other than them. We'll see where the cards come in. I do like their lineup. I typically end up with a fair amount of cards no matter who's on the mound, no matter what's going on. But I definitely want to get to Joe Ryan shares. So if I push Joe Ryan a little bit, it might limit the card shares that I get. And I think I'm going to get to a lot of them naturally, just at where he's priced isn't all that crazy. So like the spot quite a bit for Joe Ryan. Reds and the Cubbies. Let's see if we got that Cubs lineup. Yes, we do. Nico in the leadoff spot again. Patty Wisdom gets in the lineup. Add another power bat to the Cubs upside. All right. So everybody knows that we're just targeting Brandon Williamson with Cubs bats, right? I don't think I need to break any new ground on that one. 17.8% strikeouts, 10% walks, 3.72% home runs, 4.48 ERA, 5.23 xFIP. That looks fairly targetable to me in a Wrigley Field game with some offense being called for on the board in Vegas. We've got Chicago with a 5.79 was the number 2 team on the board in Vegas for implied runs today. And Cincinnati, 4.83, one of the higher implied run totals going up against Drew Smyly. So I don't really have too much interest in Smyly. He projects out okay. So for 6,800, I get it, and I can get behind it on the DK slate. 8,000, it feels like a bit of a stretch with similar values on the FanDuel slate, but I think a few shares, a few darts are okay. I just, I like this Reds lineup. I want to use a lot of this Reds lineup. I think given their decently high implied total, it just doesn't seem like a great spot for Smyly. And he's not a premium talent. 3.85% home runs, 4.50 ERA, a 4.73 xFIP, striking out 20%, walking 8%. Okay swinging strike rate, but not a great CSW to go with it. Not terrible for premium contact by any means, and has been an effective major league pitcher over the course of his career. But all these numbers look a lot like last year's numbers, look a lot like the year before. He's Drew Smyly. He's rarely exceptional. He's rarely a slate winning option. 68 on DK as a value SP2 is fine. That's where I would probably make my stand with Drew Smyly if somebody said, hey, your family's dangling over a net of vipers and you got to play Drew Smyly on one of these 2 sites, and if you get it right, we'll let them go. I would probably use him as a DK value. FanDuel, I don't see him winning the slate tonight at 8,000. Could be wrong. He could get there. The projection's okay. He's playable, but not great. Reds lineup I definitely want to get into. There is a significant amount of multi-position eligibility, basically any way they slice this lineup. It's an interesting configuration. We get Joey Votto in the lineup against the lefty. He wasn't in the projected, but that's fine. Take his power upside. Christian Encarnacion Strand climbing to 5th, which I really like because he was my overall home run pick for the day. 12.95 is up a little bit from, I think I had him at 12.5 when I wrote the home run column. 73 WRC plus, a home run in 49 plate appearances. He's going to pull it together and be a very, very good hitter. Tyler Stevenson, Stuart Fairchild are okay options at the bottom of the lineup. Will Benson I like a lot as a wraparound play from the bottom. 3,100, 3,000, 280, 380, 528, a 248 ISO, 7 homers, 10 steals. Creating runs 38% better than average in his first 187 plate appearances. He's like the unheralded one of the good rookies for this team. Nick Senzel hitting second in the lineup. 235, 311, 382 with an 83 WRC plus on the season for Nick Senzel. But against left-handed pitching, in a small sample, 78 plate appearances, 57% better than average for run creation, so 157 WRC plus, slashing 343, 410, 557 with a 214 ISO and 4 of his 8 home runs. So Senzel against the lefty for 3,200, 2,800, especially on FanDuel for 28 with triple position eligibility. I kind of like that spot for Nick Senzel. You don't have Ellie De La Cruz in the lineup, which I just realized. So that kind of sucks. You've got Kevin Newman in the leadoff spot. That's a downgrade to them. But I still like this part of the lineup. And I include Will Benson in that. Even Stuart Fairchild can be a little bit sneaky down the bottom of the lineup. 191 plate appearances, 4 home runs. Contact profile is not really there. Contact profile was better last year, 9.5%. Barrels, 41.3%. Hard hits. Wasn't bad. Oh, Marcus Stroman on the injury list. Bo Bichette, too. So I think the Reds lineup does play. No Ellie's definitely a downgrade. I'm glad I noticed that. 3,000, 2,600 for Kevin Newman off the top. He's a limited player. He's a functional part as like a bolt-on up at the top. It might have made more sense to go with like Nick Senzel at the top and then just go right into McLean, Steer, Encarnacion, Votto, and then like slot Kevin Newman like 6th. But they didn't do that, so we'll play it this way. I'll use Kevin Newman. Triple position eligible for 26 on FanDuel. Dual eligibility at first and third. First and third is limiting. He's a lot better with shortstop and second base eligibility for the price on FanDuel. First and third, the positioning is kind of limited because there's a lot of much better corner infielders with a lot better power upside, a lot better run creation upside. So I don't love him as much on DK. He's a much more usable part on the FanDuel slate. This part of the lineup I still like. Cubby side of things. Nico at the top. The prices are okay. 33.46. It's arguably high. I've made the argument a couple times in recent days. 8 homers, 26 steals, a 101 WRC plus, an okay leadoff hitter. Definitely can contribute in the role. The speed is great. The hit tool is fine. 2.2% barrels, 33.6% hard hits. I don't really believe many more home runs are coming, but as a correlated part, as a guy who can definitely get on ahead of these guys, help create runs, he's fine. I would rather spend my money on some of these other guys, though. Like Chris Morel with all his power upside. Hitting second today is a little bit of a bump for him. 15.5% barrels, 49% hard hits. We get an extra plate appearance or so out of that spot. In projections, like an extra half or 2/3 of a plate appearance or whatever. But there's extra expectation hitting second in the lineup. Second base only on DK. 4,100 for triple position eligibility. It's a high price to pay, but with the better spot in the lineup, I'm happier about it than I was yesterday, at least, with triple position eligibility. Cody Bellinger is back to being a star caliber player, hitting third in the lineup. Dansby Swanson, 2 home runs last night, 15 on the year. We've talked about how he's underperformed past seasons so far, but obviously there's still a ton of pop, a ton of talent in that bat at shortstop. 4,400, 3,200, very affordable too. This is a very, very cheap price for Dansby Swanson's upside, as evidenced by last night. 3,200, cheap on FanDuel as well. Ian Happ, I kind of prefer Ian Happ up here. Like maybe you go like Morel down here and Happ up here would have been a better spot to stick Morel. I like getting the plate appearances on Morel, but from a lineup construction perspective, you want Happ's on base percentage ahead of some of these power hitters. Not that any of these guys are bad at getting on base. They're actually quite good at it, which is going to help exploit the weaknesses of Brandon Williamson, even if they're not hitting home runs, which they've got tons of upside to do today. I think that this lineup, just the way that they sequence, the way they all get on base, the way that they can draw some walks, it's just going to give Brandon Williamson some some fits on the mound today. So the Cubbies are a big part of plans again on this spot. Bottom of the lineup, you get John Gomes as a power-hitting cheap catcher, 9 home runs and 260 plate appearances with a good triple slash too. 286, 327, 458. There's nothing predictive in that, but it's, as a descriptive stat, it's a good season for him in 260 plate appearances. Seiya Suzuki's been down, but he's cheap. Heimer Candelario, 16 home runs on the season, most of which came against righties, as we talked about a bunch of times when he was on the Nats. But hitting eighth, I mean, the pressure's off down there for that play. 4,200, 2,900. It's not like we're rostering him as an expensive 3-hitter in this lineup, or 2-hitter, whatever he was in D.C. And then you get Patrick Wisdom down there. Tons and tons of power from the right side. 19 home runs on the season and only 248 plate appearances. He's a 199, 296, 505 hitter, but 113 WRC plus with that triple slash is pretty good. 37.1% strikeouts, pretty bad, but tons of power potential from the last spot in the lineup. Cubbies up and down. Another priority Cubs spot here. So really for me, neither one of the pitchers, but I get Smiley on the DK slate. He's in play as a dart throw. Maybe a late. Nah, dart throw. I don't want to draw that line too finely because I called the other kid not a dart throw. Better than a dart throw, whoever that was. Brandon Williamson not in play. Cubbies lineup, then the Reds. Bats on both sides. Larry's talking Saber Sim in the chat. Cubs bats with Cole is just too easy on FanDuel. They really need to tighten up pricing, in my humble opinion, says Greg. Yeah, FanDuel pricing pretty liberal, pretty loose. Yankees plan to have Nestor Cortez back either Saturday or Sunday. Cool. I'll see Nestor because I'm going to both of those games. Oh, wait. I just got a text from my mom saying that my uncle is not going to make the trip, actually, so maybe I'm not going to the game on Sunday. Live updates for my plans for the weekend as we talk about this baseball slate. But interesting bump to the Yankees rotation with Nestor coming back over the weekend, but they're largely irrelevant at this point in the season. But yeah, Greg, I haven't looked at construction on FanDuel, but the way they've been pricing things has been really loose. You can get to essentially anything on FanDuel with basically anything else, and if you are at all willing to embrace discounted pitching with a little bit of risk attached to it, it pays extreme dividends for lineup building on FanDuel. You can literally combine anything with anything else. But the fact that you can do it with Garrett Cole has a ton of value with the Cubbies here. So I like that. I like to hear that quite a bit. You also reminded me that I got to put my placeholder lineups in. So that's what I'm doing right now as I look over here. That's why I picked up the phone and saw the text from my mom. And then I put the phone back down without putting in the placeholder lineups because I'm a dumbass. Bear with me, gang. So, all right, as I put the... let me see if these lineups are in. They probably are. Yep, both lineups in. All right. I have to remember to go back and actually enter those placeholders. But let me put these lineups in so I can talk about it while I do that, and it'll bore the entire room into clicking away, going to other DFS shows. Those also ran DFS shows. Hey, hit the like button and the subscribe button if you haven't already. Speaking of, make sure you're doing that during the shows. I know you guys are good at reminding one another of that in the chat rooms. I always love seeing it with pretty good ratios of likes to views and everything. And I got to tell you, some strong view numbers over the last handful of days. We did very well over the weekend. I don't know if other shows were just not on and people were tuning into us, but we picked up some views over the weekend. Had a good day yesterday. Really love to see it, gang. Hopefully we picked up some new people out there with Meech's big win and Dimitri sending out that tweet. Hopefully garnering some attention, having the rotoscouts badge. Again, if you weren't here at the top of the show, congrats to Dimitri on a monster 15 grand or so probably in profit. It looked like 16K coming home overall. So just dynamite. Took down the $33 fourth in the $400 plus on FanDuel. Just a dynamite night for Dimitri. So congrats again, bud. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. My placeholders are in, and we can keep on rolling here. All right. White Sox, Rangers. As we talked about at the top of the show, Dane Dunning pulling in a pretty nice little projection there, and he only cost 6,100 on the DK slate, 7,400 on FanDuel. I think he's a major piece of value on the DK slate. It might not work out. The White Sox do have a few good hitters, but basically everybody in the White Sox lineup outside of Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez, when he's been healthy, is kind of underperforming the entire season this year to several seasons. If you're talking about like Joan Moncada over the last couple of years, Andrew Benintendi over the last couple of years, just limited to like hit tool and some speed, but not really all that productive of a player. Andrew Vaughn has been like, okay, 13 home runs, a 178 ISO, 105 WRC plus, okay numbers, but he hasn't taken that big step forward that they were hoping for. Oscar Cola, Sebi Zavala, Zach Remillard at the bottom of the lineup. Tim Anderson up top with all his struggles. It's these two guys and then a lot of bolt-on parts, some of which have been very good players over time, some of which are expected to become good players. It's a really scuffling lineup overall. So I do think there's potential for Dane Dunning to deliver around that kind of a score with a little bit of a higher ceiling, obviously. He doesn't go to the same heights that the Garrett Coles, the McClanahans, those guys of the world do. He's a limited strikeout pitcher, but he's good at keeping the ball in the yard. He's good at limiting runs. 3.28 ERA on the season. He's got a 4.75 xFIP. That's the concern. A lot of contact available, but not a ton of premium contact. 7.5% barrels. Decent amount of hard hits. Okay exit velo, but only 2.28% home runs on 10.7 degrees of launch. And that's actually up from what he's done over time. Last year, 153 innings, 5.4 degrees of launch, 2.98% home runs. Year before, 117 and 2/3, 6 degrees of launch, or call it 7, round up, 7 degrees of launch, 2.54% home runs. So he's always been good at limiting home run potential. And if we think about like the one thing the White Sox have done fairly effectively this year is hit home runs. So it's another spot where I just see a little bit of a limiting potential from the pitcher on the home run upside, and a team that's been bad for sequencing, bad for run creation all year on the opposite side. Leads me to some shares of Dane Dunning when he projects this well for these cheap prices. FanDuel, yes, at the bargain price. That's a spot where if you embrace it, I don't know what his ownership looks like, but that helps you get far afield on a day where, and I mentioned this in the articles, and I think it's important to reiterate, and I've talked about it on a lot of recent shows, especially on a day like today, where if you're just booking those top couple pitchers that we looked at, that leads you down a hyper-specific lane of lineup construction because only these certain things are available while all these other windows are just, they're shuttered. Picture walking down a street with a bunch of stores and only a few of them are open and everything else is shuttered. So you can only buy items from the athletics store, from the Royals store, to extend the clunky analogy. And everybody who rosters those guys is going to be doing that. So it all depends on where you get to. Like we were just saying, you can get to Garrett Cole and Cubs on FanDuel. That's pretty great. But a lot of people will take advantage of that too, right? So a lot of people will be traveling down very similar lanes of roster construction. So if you embrace a guy like Dane Dunning for like $3,000 less, now you've got more money to spend on those hitter combinations. That rolls up those shutters on a lot of those stores where you could get to, even if you can get to a lot of Cubs, let's say, with Garrett Cole, now you can get to a lot of Cubs that includes all of their premium options. Now you can get to them in combination with another premium team. So it really does pay to embrace risk on the FanDuel slate with some of these guys that look pretty good, have been good, provable talents at low prices. On DK, he's just on the board as a very good value option at SP2. There's no mystery to why he's in play on the DK slate with this kind of a projection. I think he looks like a good option today. The strikeout upside is limited, but it is a Diamondbacks. It is a White Sox lineup with a 25.2% strikeout rate across that lineup. So I think there's potential for Dane Dunning to even find a couple additional strikeouts in this matchup. And again, he's just been pretty good, at least on the surface, with a little bit of concern around the xFIP, obviously. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm just focused on this ERA. I do have concern on this, and I will go to some shares of White Sox to hedge any position that I take on Dane Dunning. But I'm not going to get carried away with it. And it's really going to be around, like, these guys. A handful of stacks that mix and match those top 6 hitters. I think we're good, and then maybe work in a couple shares of Oscar Colas. If you're on DK, maybe you can work in a few shares of Sebi Zavala for $2,400. Very inconsistent hitter, but a little bit of power. Rangers side of things going up against Dylan Cease. $8,400 is very cheap for Dylan Cease's talent on DK. $93 is pretty cheap on FanDuel. He projects in that good, mid-range. 27.6% strikeouts is down several percentage points year over year. The ERA is up a little bit at 4.15. xFIP is 3.93. He's been better in years past, but he's still an effective enough pitcher on the right night. Definitely has major strikeout upside. Hasn't been completely lousy for power. 2.31% home runs on 44.2% hard hits, 7.2% barrels. The hard hits are up a little bit too high. The barrels are, fine, but higher than I'd like. 6.2% barrels was much better last year, and only 31.2% hard hits. That was outstanding last year. 2.14% home runs. The home run rate hasn't really suffered that much, though. ERA is up, xFIP is up a little, and strikeouts are down. Those are your concerns. Swinging strikes are down 2.5 points. So some concerns about the lack of strikeouts, but on a fairly short slate, I do think he is on the board here. Limited shares just because it's the Rangers on the other side. I do think we're going to Rangers bats. It's basically the lineup that we were calling for in the projected, except no Ezekiel Duran. So that's a little bit of a downgrade at the bottom of the lineup, but we're taking a guy we had projected to hit 8th out of the lineup, so it's not that big a deal. It's just a player that I like. Marcus Semion's a star in the leadoff role, focusing a little less on power and a little bit more on getting on base. He lowered his strikeout percentage by a couple of points, getting on base a little bit more, helping create runs. Still good power, 15 home runs, 9 stolen bases. A limited contact profile, 5.5% barrels, 36.2% hard hits. But that's kind of who he's been over time. So down from the 45 home run hitter from 2 years ago, but he was already that guy last year. He's a little bit behind last year's pace for home runs, but not tragically so. He could still get to 26 home runs on the season. Jankowski, good bolt-on part for correlated scoring for 2,800, 2,600. Can steal you a base if he gets on, 305, 395, 390. He's getting on pretty regularly in 206 plate appearances, 125 WRC plus. Nathaniel Lowe, very good first baseman for a very cheap price, 4,200, 3,300. Well, very cheap price on the DK slate and a couple $100 too cheap on the FanDuel slate. 132 WRC plus leads a high-scoring Texas team. 285, 380, 450, 12 homers on the season. Maybe a little bit of a lack of power. The hard hits are down a little bit. The barrels are down a little bit, but he's still having a tremendous season, and he's very affordable. He helps average down the price of Semien. Semien and Garcia are the only expensive players on this team. Everybody else just helps average down their costs, and everybody else is good. Garcia's a star, 26 homers, 252 ISO, 30% better than average, creating runs, playing basically every day. Josh Young's right there with him, 20 homers on the season, 207 ISO. He's cheap at 4,700, 3,100, so he helps average down the prices of Garcia and Semien in a stack. Mitch Garver's got power as a cheap catcher. Leody Taveras has been a star basically from the bottom of the lineup. I mean, not an actual star, but like as a 9 hitter, that's a star 9 hitter. 275, 318, 440, 11 homers, 11 steals, 8% better than average than league average creating runs from the 9 spot all year. So he gets a little bump hitting 7th today. Sam Huff, Josh Smith. Josh Smith can provide very infrequent power. 146 plate appearances, 4 home runs. Sam Huff, a little bit of pop if I remember the pro player correctly. Yeah, 4 homers and 132 last year. Call those guys basically the same. A little bit of inconsistent pop, just mix and match options. If you're building 20 stacks of Rangers, they're in 2 or 3 of them. Not many. So, yes to Dane Dunning value. Yes to Dylan Cease, but I don't know what order I want to rank that. Okay, that's what I did on the article. I'm going to go with it. I called it Dane Dunning. Yes to Dane Dunning. Yes to Dylan Cease. Yes to the Rangers bats as like a solid mix mid-level option. Rangers rank 9th by projected points, 10th for FanDuel value, 9th for DK value, 11th overall for home runs against Cease. So it's not a great spot. It's like a mid-board spot. But I think they're playable, and obviously they have a monster ceiling on the right night. White Sox bats definitely in play, but less so. They didn't rank out very well at all. 14th ranked out of 16 teams, 12th for value on FanDuel, points per dollar value, 14th for points per dollar value on DK, and 13th for home runs, even with Lubob over the magic number. Lubob was the only guy in that lineup over the magic number, just because he's so damn good. Let's move on. 3 games to go. 5:19, plenty of time. Kodai Senga, monster projection. Really like the spot here for Senga. Chuck Deuces loves Dunning on FanDuel. All right, I'm with you, buddy. Dimitri's in the chat talking about his lineup. Love it, man. Man, the crazy thing is I barely know baseball. More of an NBA, NFL guy. I expect to see you back here for NBA and NFL shows in the fall, Dimitri. Love that. Throwbacks in the chat. What's up, Yerp? Arcathelza, am I going to White Sox here? I'll have a little bit. I mean, I typically will have a little bit of basically anything. But it would be really limited around like Lubob, Eloy Jimenez, and a couple of those bolt-ons. Yeah, Heaney was a great call in that lineup last night for sure. We talked about him. We talked about it exactly what he was last night. He had the monster strikeout upside, but he has home run issues. On a day where no Burger in the lineup, took a big righty bat out of the lineup, big righty power bat, he blazed his way to a monster strikeout total, or a monster game. Let's see if we got the Mets. Nope, not yet. Oh, what's the weather situation in this game? That's what I wanted to check. I forgot to check it today. Let me pull that up real quick. Labs has it as flagged as red, which caught my eye before. I haven't read the actual report, though. We'll pull that up now. I'm laughing because Labs has it as red and Roth has it as green. Stray shower or storm, not fully out of the question. Seems like it's fine. Wind's blowing out. Thank you, Mr. Roth, from Roto Grinders. St. Louis does look a little bit more concerning, but I think we play. Everything else is fine. All right, so getting back to this one. I mentioned the flaw with Kodai Senga, the walk rate. He's an inefficient pitcher. 11.9% walks is a little bit rough. But he's been getting away with it outside of everything except for the starts where it cuts into his depth of innings. The only impact that really has had on him is sometimes he comes out after like 5 innings after walking 5. Also has a good strikeout total, but it ruins his fantasy upside. Hopefully we don't get that day when he doesn't have a major problem with walks or he pitches more efficiently, finds his strikeouts. Then we're dealing with a pretty high upside pitcher. 3.17 ERA is very good. 3.78 xFIP is fine. 12.5% swinging strikes, 29% CSW, both very good. 29.1% strikeout rate overall, but the 11.9% walk rate is the concern. Only 5.4% barrels, 2.47% home runs. So I'm not really sweating any of the inconsistent power that this lineup has. It's just a matter of does Senga come out and pitch efficiently for the money, find his strikeouts or not. Could they ding him for power? Sure. Could the Royals go off? Bobby Witt hits 2 home runs. Sal hits a home run, and MJ Melendez manages to double or something. God forbid he should hit a home run. I think there's, the possibility that happens, but I'm very much on the Senga side against a team that we've just been targeting basically all year. Lowest scoring teams in the league. Plenty of upside for strikeouts. Plenty of lack of walk rate. So I think this definitely helps Senga in this case. These guys are a bunch of free swingers for the most part that don't really draw many walks. So all of his waste pitches in the dirt might get swung at instead of getting taken by guys who don't walk all that well. So I think it helps him limit his walks, limit the free passes, and enhances his upside today. I love the price at DK at 95. That's a great price for this opportunity. 10-6, happy to pay it on FanDuel. Hope it keeps him a little bit lower owned than he probably should be in this matchup. Royals on the other side, really no interest in them. Very limited shares. Less interest in them than in the White Sox, I think, to put it in perspective. Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt, MJ, and Sal are really the most playable guys by far. You can maybe bolt on some Michael Massey for a little bit of lefty power in a very infrequent sense if you want, but he's a 217, 275, 353 hitter with a 69 WRC plus in 273 plate appearances. Strikes out 25.3% of the time. Seems like a guy who's going to feed more strikeouts to Kodai Senga rather than like a big threat against him. Edward Olivares, the lowest strikeout rate on the team. Also just a 5.1% walk rate, though. Matt Duffy, 18.6% strikeouts, but only 5.7% walks. Kyle Isbell, 19.4% strikeouts, only 3.8% walks. So all the guys who don't strike out at an aggressive pace on this team don't really walk. So maybe they put the ball in play against Senga, but balls in play against Senga haven't been a problem. I'm perfectly fine with him letting the ball get in play. So especially with those hitters. The guys who do hit for a little bit of pop all strike out too much and don't walk that much. It's a really good spot for Senga. Cole Ragans on the other side, not so much. 29 and a third, One start. I think he went 5 innings in that start, if I'm remembering the article correctly. 5 innings, faced 20 Rays hitters on July 15th, struck out 3, walked 2, allowed 1 run on 4 hits to the Rays. 21.4% strikeouts overall, but a 12.7% walk rate, 5.22 ERA, 4.94 xFIP, 3.17% home runs, 40.2% hard hits from a guy who's mostly a bullpen lefty arm. I don't like it at 66 on DK. I don't like it at 56 on FanDuel. I don't think he goes anything beyond 5 innings. I think that's probably his ceiling if he manages to last that long. The Mets have been up and down all year, but there's enough talented guys on that team. Nimmo and Lindor know how to draw a walk at the top of the lineup. Arguably, Pete Alonso does as well at 9.1%. Those guys all have power. Jeff McNeil, if he's hitting third, kind of a flawed option as a 3-hitter, but you hope that he resets the table. Like, you hope Nimmo either homers or gets on base. Lindor either homers or gets on base after him, like drives in Nimmo to clear the bases. Or if Nimmo failed, he gets on base, McNeil gets on base, Alonso gets the 3-run knock. Or if Lindor comes through, clears the bases, McNeil resets the table for Alonso. So he's just got to come through with the hit tool. You need 3 singles out of Jeff McNeil for him to have value, and he's got to score a couple of runs for him to have value. He does very little else at the plate. Alonso's a stud. 14.7% barrels, 40.3% hard hits, 31 homers, 416 plate appearances, 292 ISO. Just an absolute masher. 4,200 on FanDuel is appropriate. 5,200 is cheap on DK. 5,100 for Lindor is also cheap on DK. And Nimmo's underpriced on both sites. Francisco Alvarez, especially if he hits here, tons and tons of value as a power-hitting young catcher. 21 homers and 277 rookie plate appearances. That's absurd production as a rookie catcher. That's just bananas that he did that. Maybe it doesn't hit another home run the rest of the way. That's still a good home run total for a rookie catcher, even if he doesn't get one the rest of the way, and he's probably going to get a couple. Starling Marte probably back in the lineup here with Kana and Pham both out of town. Mark Vientos should get a lot of everyday opportunities now. 214, 260, 329, 2 homers and 77 plate appearances. Tons and tons of power. We expect a lot of home runs out of this kid over time. 14% barrels, 56% hard hits in the small sample to support the upside. And he costs the dead minimum with first and third base eligibility, so you don't have to decide between him and Pete Alonso on the DK slate for the dead minimum. If Vientos is in the lineup, he should be in a lot of Met stacks. Brett Beatty, left-handed, decent hard hit rate, hasn't done a ton with it. 7 homers and 293 plate appearances. Another high-end rookie. Danny Mendick is like a bolt-on at the end of the lineup. So very limited interest in anything Royals, only around the premium bats in like a hedge position against a lot of Senga. And I think I'm going to have a lot of Senga tonight. No interest in Cole Ragans whatsoever on either site. Mets, yes. They rank lower than I'd expect for projections. 12th for projections. But I get it because you've got some scuffling Mark Vientos numbers in there, struggling Starling Marte. Like the bottom of this lineup kind of drags down the projections, as we can see in those colored dots. But I do think there's plenty of upside. There's plenty of ceiling. They rank second overall for home run potential on this slate. Alonso obviously pulling some of that up. Lindor, Marte, Alvarez. Decent home run opportunity, if nothing else, for the Mets. D-backs, Giants. Slate Ciccone. Ciccone? Not sure. I'm going to go Ciccone until somebody tells me otherwise. I'm not totally sure. 6,500 on either site. Major league debut. Fully stretched out. Has been pitching full season in the PCL and there with the AAA team for the Diamondbacks. Highly regarded prospect. Plus fastball, a pretty good slider that's still developing and is expected to develop into like a pretty much a plus pitch. He's thrown 103 innings, 20 starts in the PCL. Be calm when we hear these numbers. 6.38 ERA and a 5.50 xFIP. Those aren't good, but it's the PCL. Most of the parks in that league play like Coors Field light. You know, it's a lighter version of Coors Field, but it's a very, very hitting-oriented league. So we take the run creation marks with a grain of salt. He's got a 23.1% strikeout rate, which is not bad. Not great, but not bad. He's 24 years old pitching in AAA, so that's totally fine. 6.4% walk rate, one of the lower walk rates in the PCL this year. So pretty good at limiting opportunities, limiting free passes. I think there's a little bit of upside for him at 6,500. Giants, not the best team for limiting strikeouts for the opposing pitcher. 24.1 for this projected lineup. Do we have the confirmed? We don't. So I think there's a little bit of strikeout opportunity. I don't love going to him, having never seen him. Like, I honestly did not know a lot about this pitcher at the start of the day, but I kind of get on board a little bit with it, just looking at some of the numbers, looking at some of the reports, and then just thinking about some pitchers that we've seen come up, debut really well with that exact, premium plus fastball and a very good slider combo. So he could be one of those starters that comes up, has the excellent debut, and then in the second start or the third start, the book catches up with him very quickly, and then he's all of a sudden looking a lot more like a rookie who needs some time to develop. It could be that spot. I'm just saying for 6,500, I think maybe a couple of darts are in order. He's not off the value board. Projects okay. It's funny, when I dropped him into the model for whatever reason, and I suspect because it's a very limited back end projection for him, it projected him for nine innings today. My nose is a little stuffy, so when I say words with N's in them, I'm sounding weird in my head, probably to you guys too. 9 innings. Sound like a certain former president a little bit. But I had to correct the innings total. So the 21 that we're seeing there on the FanDuel scale, that's a 5-inning projection. So I think there's a little bit of potential for him. At the same time, I would roster some Giants bats as a hedge position to that. Lefty power for sure from the Giants. Lamont Wade's been limited lately, but he did hit his 10th home run of the season, still getting on base at a strong clip, 130 WRC+. Conforto's got major lefty power for 3,700, 3,000. Jock Peterson, major lefty power for 4,000, 3,100. J.D. Davis slotting in between them has been better for power against righties this year. Very good top 4 there. And then a mix and match kind of bottom 5. Pat Bailey's cooled off a lot at the plate. Some of his defensive highlights, by the way, are fantastic. There's a good, somebody sent a good tweet that's going around out there with just a quick little compilation of some of his throwouts. But he's deadly behind the plate in terms of throwing out attempted stolen bases. Not so much with the bat. 256, 288, 415 now, down to a 90 WRC+. Started out really good. Cooled off. I don't know that he's going to come roaring back to life, but there's a little bit of potential there for 33-28, especially against a rookie pitcher. Luis Matos, Brandon Crawford, Isan Diaz, and AJ Pollock on this team now. 2,500, 2,200, 5 homers and 141, a 169, 220, 315 triple slash with a 48 WRC plus and 141, but a better hitter over time. Veteran outfielder, very cheap. 527 plate appearances last year, low end triple slash. Below average for run creation, but did hit 14 home runs. The year before was actually pretty good. 297, 355, 536, a 240 ISO, 422 plate appearances, 21 homers, 37% better than average creating runs. As like a sneaky bat who very well might hit higher in the lineup, I think AJ Pollock is in play for 25-22 if you're building giant stacks. So they're very playable, but I do think the kid's got value on the other side. Very small doses, dart throws, but a little bit of value. D-backs lineup going up against Logan Webb. I think that's pretty limited. Logan Webb is a very, very good pitcher. He's pitched very, very well. You guys know I don't love home road splits, but he's been excellent in this park this season. 9.8 on DK is too cheap. 10.5 on FanDuel, probably about right. 24.9% strikeout rate, 141 and 2/3. Remember, I said he's right in there with that group of aces for me today. A 3.49 ERA, a 2.96 xFIP. Doesn't get himself in trouble with only a 4.3% walk rate. A couple of hiccups with homers this season. It's something I talk about with him a lot. And you're surprised when you see a 3.02% home run rate on Logan Webb, because last year it was 1.4. The year before it was 1.5. Negative 0.5 degree launch angle 2 years ago, 3.1 degrees last year. Still only 2.6 degrees this year. So it's just kind of come on some happenstance, some mistakes around, some barrels, guy just leaving the ball up a little bit. He's made more mistakes this year, clearly, than in years past. The hard hits are up, 45.5% hard hits. The exit velo's up a little bit. But overall, it really hasn't hurt him. So I really don't have that many concerns about Logan Webb. The Diamondbacks are good at limiting strikeouts. They've scuffled a little bit over the last 2-3 weeks, but they're still a very, very good team. So I do think you can take some shares of the Diamondbacks, but with the expectation that he's going to have a limiting impact on their home run upside, we're really looking for their sequencing skills, their run creation skills. They're a very good team in terms of that strikeout limitations. Like the top 5 has an average strikeout rate of 17.5%. With these 4 hitters amounting to 19 homers and then 77 homers and another 5 from Geraldo Perdomo. So there's a lot of power here in a limited spot. There's a lot of base hit potential, a lot of sequencing potential from a lot of very good hitters at fair prices. Geraldo Perdomo is good for on base, correlates with all these guys. Marte, one of the top second basemen in the game. Corbin Carroll, 21 homers, 33 steals. Cooled off a little bit for power, but still stealing bases, still getting on, creating runs at a great clip. Christian Walker, very good home run upside, very limited strikeouts. Gurriel, limited in the triple slash this year, only 249, 297 on the front end, 99 WRC plus, but still hitting for power. 46.7% hard hit rate for 3,800, 3,000, 16 home runs, 205 ISO. I'll take the discount for that power hitter. Jake McCarthy, if he's hitting here in the lineup, is somewhat interesting. Okay batting average. Not a great on base for a guy who needs to get on base to exploit his great speed. 23 stolen bases. That should be higher. Given a better on base percentage, it would be. So would the WRC plus. So he needs to just focus on getting some base hits, getting himself to first base, and then everything else takes care of itself for that player. Tommy Pham, good season so far. Got himself traded out of New York. 10 home runs, 11 steals. Decent bat, 3,300, 2,900. I could see him sliding up to the 6th spot, 7th spot even, depending on how they create this lineup. But a decent asset for them in the outfield. Replaces a lower-end player in Alec Thomas in the lineup. Jace Peterson, a little bit of lefty power. Jose Herrera, kind of an afterthought at catcher. So this one is definite yes to Logan Webb. Yes to some Slade Ciccone dart shares in limited fashion. Small doses. Definitely some hedge position with Giants bats against him. And then small doses, I think, of Diamondbacks bats. They rank out okay because they're just a good team, but they have the bottom-ranked home run projection, to put things in perspective. Last game on deck. Happy Hogan Harris, 5,800, 6,400, 20.2% strikeout rate, 6.07 ERA, 5.05 xFIP, allowing 90 miles an hour of exit velo, 7.7% barrels, 2.88% home runs, going up against the Dodgers. Does any of that sound appealing to roster Hogan Harris? 5,800, I guess if you want to take your shots just based on a price tag, that's your guy at the cheapest price, but I don't see it at all. I see no value in this pitcher against the Dodgers here. Against the lower end team, maybe you get away with it, but not against Los Angeles. Just doesn't look like an appealing spot. Tony Gonsolin, on the other hand, definitely an appealing value play, particularly 7,500 on DK. That's just very, very cheap. 8,400 is playable on FanDuel for sure. Projects out well. Projects out very well for his value pricing. Only 20% strikeouts on the year, walking too many at 9.6, 4.25 ERA, a 5.08 xFIP. He hasn't been great in 82 and 2/3, 16 starts. Was a lot better last year, 2.14 ERA, a 3.70 xFIP. Struck out almost 24%, only a 0.87 walk rate, whip rather. 2.21% home run rate, 5.6% barrels. So across the board was better in 2022, but he's facing like one of the worst teams in baseball. So I see some definite upside for Tony Gonsolin here. Don't really have much interest in going to the A's. Do we have this lineup? We don't. If you do go to A's, it's the semi-capable lefties, the young lefties, plus Seth Brown, plus Zach Geloff. So really you're going like J.J. Bleday, these 3 guys, this guy, so these 4 guys, this guy, and then if you want Brett Rooker, you can have him. If you want Jordan Diaz, he's a good choice for a cheaper price. First and second base, 7 home runs, 254, 294, 433, a 103 WRC plus. Rooker's obviously got the home run upside. I don't want to deny him the one thing he does okay. 18 homers on the season. Was it like 11 of those came before May 1st, I think? It's been kind of just hitting him very intermittently since, but he's priced down. It's not like you're paying a big tax for him on, especially on DK. 33, arguably still a little high on FanDuel. Feels more like a $2,800 hitter to me. Probably shouldn't be more expensive than Seth Brown. Seth Brown's the best actual power hitter on this team. It's not pretty, though. Geloff is a decent young prospect. 4 home runs since the call-up and only 64 plate appearances. Stolen 5 bases, creating runs 31% better than average. Kind of an unheralded young player that they called up. Not unheralded like in their system, but like in the grand scheme of like when we hear all about Ellie De La Cruz and Christian Encarnacion Strand and guys like that. These guys fly a little under their prospect radar for DFS purposes. Geloff's a play, 4,300, 3,500. If you're going to A's stacks, you definitely want him. Highest home run mark on the board. Seth Brown's a play, 10 homers on the season. These other 2 rookies, Cody Thomas and Tyler Soderstrom, also premium rookies in their system. 36 plate appearances for Thomas, 1 home run, 47 for Soderstrom, who's actually the highest regarded of those 3 players. No home runs yet, 190, 277, 190, but a playable bat for a cheap price at catcher. Tyler Wade, if he's at the bottom of the lineup for the dead minimum on DK at shortstop for $2,600 on FanDuel for 3 positions. Toolsy guy, like low-end power, can steal you a base, could hit a home run, but very, very low-end play. It's only like a throw a few shares in if you happen to, for some reason, be building 10A stacks. Put him in 3 of them. But a low-end play. Just a guy who could maybe make something work for you at a very cheap price. Dodgers bats up and down the lineup against Hogan Harris, regardless of basically what version of this lineup comes out. I'm assuming we'll have Chris Taylor in it, who's an underrated $3,200, $2,800 option, 12 home runs, a 228 ISO from the right side. Just kind of mashing this year. Multi-position eligible, facing a lefty and a weak lefty at that. Enrique Hernandez as a righty, as a utility man, is fine to work into some lineups for cheap prices, multi-position eligible. Miguel Rojas has been pretty bad this season, 49 WRC plus in 268. James Outman, lefty. Don't really care about that with his power upside and with this lefty on the mound. Obviously, the scene is to be made with the top 5 here. 62 and 6,400 for Mookie and Freddie, respectively, on DK. 42 and 43 for them on FanDuel. Both totally worth it. Both MVP caliber players having great seasons. 55 WRC plus, 55% better than average for run creation for Mookie Betts. 67% better for Freddie Freeman. Will Smith joins him at 35% better. He's got 13 home runs. He strikes out at a 15.3% clip, walks at a 13.9% pace. He's a dominant catcher play. If you get a Med Rosario here or down here, he's in play from basically anywhere. I like the upside for Med Rosario to really turn his season around in this lineup. It's just a much, much better spot, rising tide, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a chance for him to finish the season with a strong 2 months here. Max Muncy, major source of power late in the lineup. Easy to go to. 5,000, 4,000. He's a little bit pricey on FanDuel, but well worth it. And don't sweat the lefty. Ooh, Buxton scratch for the Twins. That makes it even more trappy. Although that might reduce the ownership. Twins lineup now goes Correa, Julian, Polanco, Kepler, Kyle Farmer, who I do like. We've talked about him a number of times as a sneaky power bat who never gets ownership, is very, very cheap across sites. So actually oddly, I kind of like that change. If I was a fan of twin stacks already, maybe that takes away a little bit of the trappiness because they'll lose ownership with Buxton not playing. And they get a sneaky $2,800, $2,600 option with triple position eligibility for a little bit of power in that lineup. That creates a little bit of an interesting wrinkle there now. Not that we're, again, it's a limited home run opportunity against, if Hudson is on, against what he does well when he's on. Only a 1.88 in the home run model for Kyle Farmer. But 14 last year, 16 2 years ago. Interesting twist. Definitely in a vacuum on the whole does reduce the overall upside for the Twins lineup. You get Polanco climbing to the 3rd spot. This top 6 actually is not uninteresting, especially with a lot of value pricing. It's going to all fly for me around what their ownership looks like for a lot of these parts now that change has come through. I'm going to find that out off the air as I'm building lineups. But before we say goodbye, let's take another quick peek at the stacks, at the pitching pool. Nothing has really changed since we started the show, obviously, because I haven't made any changes. 24-mile-an-hour winds where, Arcathelza? Do me a favor, guys. When you drop comments like that in the chat, be specific about where you're talking about. Just because it's like, as I go through games and I catch up minutes later, I'm not exactly sure which spot you're referring to. Where are there 24-mile-an-hour winds? Was that San Francisco? San Francisco has a limiting effect on wind overall, but that's a pretty aggressive amount of wind. I imagine that's gusting, not sustained. Could be a bump to Giants bats for sure. Given that they're facing the rookie and they'll be putting the ball in the air a little bit more. For Diamondbacks bats, I don't know how much more that the wind really has an impact if everything's going to be on the ground. Doesn't really change my take on the Diamondbacks. Paul C asks, Kikuchi or Cease? He's asking in the chat, but I'll chime in. I think both options are playable. And since we've got the pitching board in front of us, you can see that in the middle of the board, they actually rank right next to each other. So it's a little whichever one you prefer, whichever one fits better. I have Cease very slightly ahead. And I think if I was making the choice, it would be Cease all day, despite the tougher matchup against the Rangers. Only slightly tougher. The Orioles are very good. I just trust Kikuchi a lot less. I've never really succeeded with him in my lineup, and I've succeeded by targeting him for home run upside many times. But a lot of people have succeeded with him in their lineup. He is a good strikeout pitcher. He does have an ability to limit other teams on the right day. I just trust Dylan Cease more. I just have more faith in his the reality of his strikeouts, the reality of his ability to limit the Texas lineup a little bit. No Corey Seager in that lineup if we're looking for additional arguments. I would take Cease a little bit more. Oh, Seager's back? Did I miss that? Oh, yep, he's back. He's in the new projected. All right. So forget what I said about no Corey Seager. Assuming that he does play, that's obviously a additional upgrade for that Rangers lineup. Everything I said still holds, but it tarnishes that spot a little bit more. Makes him more of a coin flip. Like, take away Cease's like 2 points for that. Would be how I would do it. Call it a draw. If Kikuchi fits better for price, you can use him. I don't think you're making a mistake by just taking the discount on him, particularly with that upgrade to the lineup. Either way, I don't think you're making a mistake. But now that we've got that, Kikuchi being roughly 1,000 and change less on both sites does have some value. Top of the board, Kodai Senga, love that spot. 10-6, happy to pay it on FanDuel. 95 discounted on DK. Shane McClanahan, plenty of upside against the scuffling Yankees. Could get dinged for power. Was showing a little bit of power potential in the Yankees' direction and has made several short starts. So there's a little bit of concern about depth, but I think he just blazes a trail through that Yankees lineup if he's going right, and it won't be a problem. Garrett Cole, obvious upside against the Rays. Obviously downside with them and all their abilities. Playing in Yankee Stadium, definite home run upside for guys like Brandon Lau, Randy Arozarena, that entire lineup from top to bottom. But Cole's been good this year. Cole's been pitching well despite a dip in strikeouts. He's limited home runs, so very happy to pay 10-9 or 10-8 for him. Joe Ryan is a must for me. 10-3, 10-1. Despite the bumps in the road for power, like we talked about, he's given up a lot of home runs in the last month or so. That's a blip. That is minor. And his strikeout rate for July was his highest month of the year at 37+%. So definite interest in Joe Ryan. Dane Dunning projects great as a value option. Tony Gonsolin against a worse team projects as equally as good for a little bit higher prices. Those are the two prime value options on this slate. I think you can do a lot of building with these options right here if you're on DK. And then I think you can include these several guys for additional value and just mix and match your way through these values. So these guys are more like mix-in value options, but they should definitely be in your pitcher pool if you're building 150 lineups. If you're only building 20, I think you'll probably get away with like mostly these guys as your SP2 values and a sprinkling of these guys. These guys are more involved for a larger pool of lineups, but any one of them could succeed. Bottom of the board here, I have no interest in these guys. Except for Ciccone down here at the extreme value. I might throw a couple darts at that. It's limited. I probably shouldn't recommend that one, because I really don't know how it's going to work out. But there is the pedigree. There are the minor league numbers to justify a few shots at it. Hogan Harris, no. Cole Ragans, no. Brandon Williamson, no. How emphatic can I get the no on Brandon Williamson? Dak Hudson, no real interest, because all we expect is maybe he limits those the Twins' power output. Grayson, I think, is a potentially big inflection point because he does have a significant strikeout upside. He is a very talented young pitcher. He just hasn't put it all together yet in like an extended sample. But I think he is an interesting spot down here. If anybody from the bottom of the board, like if anybody from Logan Webb down surprised today, it could be Grayson Rodriguez. That makes sense. Cease delivering a strong start, Kikuchi delivering an okay start wouldn't be a total shock. I think that's it top to bottom, guys. Rays lineup confirmed. Jandy Diaz, Wander Franco, Brandon Lau, Randy Arozarena, Isaac Paredes, Luke Raley, Manny Margot back in the lineup hitting 7th, Josh Lowe, Rene Pinto. Perfectly playable version of the Rays lineup. Trey says Terry ahead scheduled by 13 minutes. Larry responds, show isn't done yet. Hey, 5:49. We've been punching out at a quarter till on some of these shorter slates, and it gives me a little time to build some lineups. Andrew Jennison says, thanks for educating and entertaining me while I'm mowing. Hit the likes for our guy. I appreciate that, buddy. Hope the lawn mowing wasn't too strenuous. I hope it's not too hot where you live. You didn't break too much of a sweat, but if you did, hopefully you're inside by now building some lineups, drinking something nice and cold and cooling off and enjoying some air conditioning. With that, gang, going to say goodbye. Hit the likes, hit the subscribes. Hit me up in Discord, any questions. If you're hanging out later on, may or may not be around as I'm hanging out with some friends and probably having a couple beers over here. But it is Wednesday night after all. But I'm in and out of there all night long on most nights. And there's a good community of people hanging out in the free Discord. It's linked from the chat if you're not in there yet. With that, somebody go win something. Somebody did last night. Somebody else go do it tonight. See you guys. Good luck.